Hi, so this is a 1995 Mazda Lantis. I bought this as a project car, fix it up and maybe sell it for a bit of a profit. But then I realized I was out of my depth. So the car is parked up for a private sale and it looks somewhat tired. According to online reports, this car is valued between $1,600 to $2,100 New Zealand dollars. It was advertised for $850, but the owner was happy to take $750 for it. I purchased this November of 2017. So it had a few issues I needed to fix before I sold it. So there's a list of things I needed doing. It had the obvious panel damage and some paint fade as well. It had a rough idle, the car would almost stall when you have all the lights and accessories on. It had a delayed throttle response, the accelerator felt a bit sticky at times. It had an engine knock or a tick. It had a torn car seat cover and the seat height adjuster on the driver's seat didn't work. It was well due for an oil and filter change. The struts on the liftback didn't work, so you had to hold it in place. Two speakers in the back didn't work, and there was also some wind noise around the driver's side door. So there's a few things to fix up there, so with that in mind we'll go back and have a look at the condition of the car. The car had nice wheels which were covered with brake dust. All the brake pads were done recently, and we have two new front tyres, so that's a good thing. The fender damage looks really bad, but it was external and there was no frame damage. The panel was also pushed back and it kept on catching on the door. We have a couple of dents there. There is paint fade around the door handle. There's paint fade on the back panel. And we have a dent there. Some scuffing on the bumper. We're missing the Mazda badge here. We've got some paint fade on the door edge and paint fade on the fender. The car's registered to be on the road for another 18 days, so I'll need to renew this. Now inside the car, the seat height adjuster looks broken and we've got colourful tape covering up upholstery damage. The car's done 217,000 kilometers, which is not too high for its age. This year model requires 6 monthly safety inspections, so this is due in 10 days time. And the oil should have been changed 2 months ago. The electrics are good, all the power windows and central locking works. We have an aftermarket stereo. Passenger seat looks good. The back seats look good. Overhead light works. And the headliner is in good condition. We don't have an airbag taking up space here, which gives you enough room for 2 glove compartments. And as an added bonus, this car comes with no airbags at all. But the latch on the bottom one is broken, which kind of defeats the purpose. And this looks really scratched. And we'll open up the lift back here, which is always a struggle. Water can collect around these walls, but there's no sign of rust and the seals are good. But the struts are gone and this thing is heavy to hold up. Looking inside the engine bay, there's no frame damage and the engine looks tidy. The cam belt and accessory belts were done recently, so I don't need to worry about that. The coolant and engine oil levels were low. That could be a bad sign, but I believe the previous owner hasn't checked the fluids for over a year and they haven't been topped up. The battery is good, it was changed last year. And now we'll have a listen to the engine. We've got this tick, and that's probably the cam lifters not getting enough oil at the top of the engine. So hopefully there's no permanent damage because of poor lubrication. but the oil looks clean and there's no smoke, so the seals and gaskets are still good. It turns out that the seat height adjuster was an easy fix. The cover holds the latch in place. So I simply screwed the cover back on and now it's fixed. I changed the oil with some 10W40 and I topped up the coolant. I also changed the oil filter as well. The oil filter is really hard to get to. It's right behind the engine, it's hard to reach from the top and you can't reach it from the bottom. I had to remove some tubing just to get to it, so it's not the best design. I then noticed some cracks on this air intake hose. This would actually explain the rough idling. Air would be leaking in past the mass airflow sensor and that would create a lean air-fuel mixture, and so the engine would struggle to stay running. So I removed the hose, I cleaned it, and I sealed it with an epoxy adhesive. Now let's listen to the engine run. And there you go. It sounds a lot smoother now and it idles a lot better. So luckily, simple maintenance fixed the problem. And the engine seems to be in pretty good condition. And now it's time to remove the fender. So you've got 3 bolts up the top and some clips around the wheel arch. Now I tried to look for a cheap second-hand replacement panel, but because this is an older car there wasn't one available, so I'll have to fix and paint this myself. There's a bolt way back here and I'll have to remove the headlight to reach it. And now I can see an extra bolt here, so I'll have to remove that as well. And after twisting and rotating, there was one last bolt. I don't have any specialty tools to straighten out the panel, but I found this method to be quite effective. So instead of hammering out the panel and thinning and stretching the metal, you apply pressure to it slowly to push it out. And next thing, I've removed the paint and I've roughed up the metal surface with an angle grinder to get it ready for body filler or Bondo. Now because I scratched up the back of the panel, it's important to paint it to prevent rusting. And this is what the panel looks like after 3 layers of body filler. I then put the panel back on and I sanded it down. I also sanded down all the parts I'll be painting. I also filled and sanded the 2 dents there. Sanded this down, filled in this dent, so I taped up the car and now it's ready for paint. First layer of primer. And second layer of primer. So I painted this panel and all other parts that needed painting. And then I started putting on the paint coats. And I got the color code from the car's information panel, so this color should match the rest of the car. And this is when I realized that things were going wrong. You can see these dips and bubbles, and the panel just doesn't look straight. And it looks even worse in the sun. This is really frustrating. I'll have to strip back the paint and start all over again. At this stage, I had enough of paint and panel work. It was time to do some upholstery instead. I'm adding this black fabric in behind to give the repair area more strength. I haven't done fabric repair in the past, so I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out. If it didn't go to plan, I was going to buy a new car seat cover. But since my wife trusted me with her sewing kit, I decided to try the cheaper option first. And now I'm using an adhesive to hold the fabric together. And now I'm using pins to hold it in place. And as I'm doing that, I'm pulling the two edges together. And this is what it looks like so far. Now the adhesive needs to dry, so I'll wait 48 hours before I stitch this together. And this is my second attempt. I sanded away the paint I added earlier. I then added more filler to even it out, and I took my time sanding it down. I ran a straight bar across the surface to pick out the highs and lows, and I sanded them down evenly. And then I noticed the spitting. The holes are hard to see at this stage, but they'll show up when paint is added, so I'll need to fix this. So I'll be using this finishing putty to take out any minor imperfections. And after that, I added a thin layer of primer. I then sanded that down to take out any extra putty. And after 3 layers of primer, it was finally time to prep for paint. And I'll wipe down the surfaces with wax and grease remover after each layer of paint. And Zoot was enjoying the sun, but he really wanted a walk. Maybe soon. And next was followed by 3 layers of paint and 2 layers of clear coat. I also had to buy an extra can of spray paint because I didn't quite have enough. And this is how it looked after 2 layers of clear coat. It's a bit hard to see on camera, but the clear coat looks very patchy and grainy, and there's lots of orange peel. Clear coat from a spray can doesn't give the best results. I'll give it 48 hours to dry and see how it goes. But it was time to take Zoot out for a play. And a cool down. And after a couple of days, it looks much better. The plastic bumpers were a bit patchy and hazy, but it wasn't too bad. And then I noticed the next problem. I tried to raise the edges on the tape, but that wasn't enough. And now we have these hard paint edges. And this tape is hard to pull off and it doesn't come off cleanly. I should have used proper painting tape. And the paint still looks hazy after the clear coat I used. I'll soak the tape in wax and grease remover to take it off, and I'll need to fix the raised edges. The plan is to sand the edges down to the paint coat and paint and clear again. I'll leave the painting for now. The glue is dry and I can stitch this together. And I was basically just going under and over. I stabbed myself a couple of times, but it was starting to come together. And just a reminder, this is before and after. It doesn't look perfect, but it's a lot better than it was before, and the area is thicker and stronger. And after thinking about it, I finally decided to buy an air compressor. It seems like a lot of money to spend on this project, but I'm sure this will come in handy in the future. I used what I had left in the spray can for the base colour, and I had to buy extra paint to use in the air compressor to finish the job. And this time I blended the new paint with the old paint to prevent any hard edges. And this looks a lot better now. And I didn't mix the paints properly here, which is why it's lighter in colour. I could have fixed it, but I didn't want to spend any more money on paint. I'll give it 3 days to completely dry, and I'll wet sand and polish after that. In the meantime, I decided to look at the speakers in the back. I removed the stereo, and looking at the wire harness, looks like we have some loose speaker wires, but I couldn't see any wires to connect to. I wanted to look at the speakers to track the wires down. I removed the cover, and to my horror, there's no sign of speakers. I guess this was the base model and speakers were expensive in the 90s. Anyway, I can't be bothered buying speakers and running wires to the stereo, so I'll just leave it there and pretend like this never happened. And after a few days of drying, it was time to wet sand. So I sprayed down the surfaces with soapy water, and I sprayed down the sandpaper, and for this I'm using 2000 grits paper, and I'm just gliding across without putting too much pressure on the surface. And I wipe that off with a microfiber towel. And next it was time to buff the surface. I used a cutting compound followed by a polish. And then I left that to dry, and I wiped it off with a clean towel. And I'll do a wash and wax a bit later on. So I got a bit lazy towards the end, and I got overspray on the windows and trim. The car's not going to pass inspection looking like this, so I'll clean this up with the paint thinner I've been using to mix my paint and clear. And the key here is to use the smallest amount possible, because you don't want any thinner dripping down onto the paint. And the car's finally cleaned up, washed and waxed. And the paint looks pretty good. other than the lighter paint on the driver door. And finally, there was one more thing to do before inspection. Throttle control wasn't very fluid and it felt a bit sticky at times, so I started by spraying some lubricant on the throttle return spring. And as you can see, there was sludge built up around the throttle body valve. And I used this throttle body cleaner to clean up the sludge. Now let's have a listen to the engine. It sounds better and it's a lot more responsive. Now it's ready for inspection. And the car needed new wiper blades, but other than that, it passed inspection, also known as a warrant of fitness here. They did make a note that the tread on one of the rear tyres was getting low, so that would probably need replacing soon. And after that, it was time to take it for a spin. The car doesn't have a lot of horsepower, but because it's light, it's very responsive and handling is very good too. Now there were a couple of things I needed doing before I sold it. The struts on the liftback don't work, and it's hard work to open it and keep it up. To replace these, they're $40 each, so I have a cheaper option in mind. And basically, I'll just be drilling through this metal rod. And now we have a hole straight through it. And I found a screw with a flat head, so basically the entire weight of the lift bag rests on it. Simple but effective. And I found the source of the wind noise. I drove around with adhesive tape on the window seals and on different gaps around the driver door, and this gap here causes the most wind turbulence. And to seal that up, I'll be using this filler adhesive. I could have used a black colour to match the trim colour, but that's all I had at home and I wasn't going out of my way to buy more products. And I'm taking off the excess and I'm cleaning up the edges. And this is the final result. It doesn't stand out too much and the wind noise is gone. And now it's time to sell the car. So I started by writing a sale purchase agreement contract. Now it's important to be honest and upfront with the buyer, so I explained why I bought the car and I detailed the repairs I did and also the faults with the car. And in this case, it was the low tread on the back tyre and the air conditioning didn't work. We both signed the contract with copies for the buyer and myself. And my asking price was $1,550. I could have possibly sold it for $1,700 to $1,800, but I wanted a quick sale and it was more about the process and experience for me rather than profit. So I had 3 people come and look at the car. The first person was an older gentleman and he was looking for something cheap and something reliable. He also used to be a panel beater in the past, so he looked at my work and then we took the car for a test drive and he was really impressed. He thought the car was worth more than I was selling it for, so that's always a positive, and he was happy to pay my asking price. The only thing was he didn't have the money on him at the time, so he asked me to hold the car for 5 days until he organised the money. I then tried to contact him after the 5 days, but I never heard back, so that was disappointing. and the second person was a student. I talked to him about the repairs I did. I then went and started the car for him, and it let out this massive squeal, and that kind of put him off. He then got into the car and he was too tall. The car seat didn't go back far enough for him, and it just wasn't comfortable, so that was a no. Now the high-pitched squeal or squeak usually comes from these accessory belts. Once they're changed, they can slowly stretch out and that can cause them to slip and squeal. In this case, I found the alternator belt to be loose. To fix this, you simply loosen the locking bolt on the left and you screw out the bolt on the right. This pulls the alternator away, which stretches the belt. And the third person bought the car from me. It was a lady buying it for her daughter. She initially wanted the car for $1,200, but I said no, the lowest I could go was $1,400. We then took the car for a test drive and they wanted to see how it performed at speed, and they thought the car was in good condition. At the time the car had almost no fuel in it, so I gave them a $50 discount, so the actual money exchange was $1,350, and they were really happy. And that was it. The car was gone and I miss it. And finally, it's time to look at the numbers. So I've done a breakdown of costs, and as you can see, the total amount spent was just over $1,500, which means there was a loss of about $200. I probably spent about $100 more on paint than I should have. If you take out the price of the compressor, you could look at this as a profit, but because I bought the e-compressor to complete the job, I'll be claiming this as a tax loss. And the last thing I want to say is that if you're doing this for profit, make sure you pay tax on any money you make. And also follow any rules and regulations where you live. For example, here, if you sell more than 6 cars in a year, or if you import more than 3 cars, you have to be a registered car dealer. So make sure you follow the law. And that was my first car project. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you want to see more of this and other car content, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching.